Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host from Kansas City, Missouri. And today we have Zena with us. She's currently in Georgia. Zena, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast today and being willing to share a little bit of your story. If you could just tell us a little bit about you, and then we can get this thing started.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is great. I just am so grateful that I even get this opportunity. I am a school teacher. I have been a teacher now for over 10 years, and we'll just stop at over 10 years because I didn't realize it was that many over until I just started counting. So I've been a teacher and I have taught special needs students, and then I have two kids now. So I have a 3-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. And I went and I started tutoring, and I tutor high school kids. I did teach when the baby was baby. I did teach to children in China how to speak English. So that was interesting. I just love to teach. So I've really had my hands. I've done swimming lessons, anything when it comes to that and kids. So that's like my passion. I like to ride horses. I've trained horses. I used to do horseback riding lessons. And music is my thing. I love music. So that's just a little bit about me. I am originally from New York. I was born and raised there. And then I did move to Georgia, and that is currently where I'm at now. After I moved to Georgia, I was married and I had my son, and my husband and I got divorced, and I met a gentleman. I am a survivor of domestic violence. And I am very proud to be standing here, not only as a survivor, but more as a warrior that is out there now for other women and children and men. And because this is one of the key points, is that domestic violence does not discriminate. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your gender, your race, nothing. It doesn't discriminate. So I'm out there for everybody. And I am on Instagram at ladyz_2021. And that's where I found you. And I have out there, I started that platform for other people to come on and share their story. What I'm working on doing is I'm trying to build a support network, a group of people to show their courage, show their strength, because and this is what I'm out here to do, to tell you that there is a life after abuse that is worth it. That is so healthy. And when you're in that abuse, I promise you will be so far down and think there's no way that anybody else who is this far down got out of it. They could not have felt as bad as I feel right now. But we did. We do. We have, but it's possible. And I want everybody to really reach out for someone, anything, any information, knowledge, education, educate others, support other people's support networks. There are people out there who do not understand what it's like to have to support somebody and really stand by somebody through some of these relationships. When you're in these relationships, you have a huge isolation. The abuser is always isolating. If the support network is not really privy to the information that's going on inside, and they think that you're pushing them away, or they think that it's a personal vendetta or just something against them, they are able to watch these shows that I have on there. And I have people who are just a support network, or they are the victim. I've had somebody come on there and be like, hey, I got hooked, I got addicted to drugs, and I became the abuser. I've had men, I've had women, and I do have another series that's coming up that we are working on, and it's diving a little bit more into the side with the children. I have had people come on who were abused as children. There was a therapist that I had on there. And if you go on my page, you'll see she wrote a book. She has a book, Daddy Issues. If you go on there, there are other people that were on there who watched abuse as they grew up and made sure that was the opposite way they went. But the more knowledge and the more education that we're able to put out there for these people, for anybody, whoever it is, that is our goal as a team, and that's what my goal is, and that's how this initially had started. My story, my story, it was hard. It was some of the things he did were, you could not, he physically attacked me, and physical abuse, you can see the marks and all of that, but I still to this day have to deal with, he put a GPS tracker under my car. Okay. And he followed me up and down the Eastern Seaboard from Georgia to New York and had a notebook. And in his notebook, he had over 30,000 addresses of where I had gone over a 2-month period before they had caught him, because he had gone on the run from the police. So in order to keep tabs on me, he put that on my car and he was following me. He fled the state. So still, obviously, there's PTSD moments and things like that. And people don't understand that this is all still residual effects and that you deal with it. Recovery is constant, whether it's drug addiction or recovery from abuse or recovery in general. It is constant every day, but it's worth it.
And so I mean, there's so many things I could even branch from what you said. I think one, it's amazing that you said that you are a warrior and not just a survivor, but a warrior, because you're out here, thriving and still living your life.
Yeah.
But then another thing that you said is, one, the fact that you have created a page and a platform for other people to tell their stories. That's something that I love to do as well, creating that platform. But sometimes that's a topic that everyone is not always so quick to be like, oh, hey, I went through this. And like you said, it is so important to have that support system and to have people around you who can say, hey, I understand what you're going through and I'm here to listen. And then another point that you made that was amazing is that you said recovery is a constant thing. And so I think a lot of times we think like, oh, you're out of it, so you should be fine now. Like, you made it out, you're good, you're so strong. Those are things that people always throw around. But for you, what were some of the things that you really truly used to heal and move forward, so that you didn't kind of stay in that place of just like, my life is over?
I still do it. I go to counseling. Counseling is key number one, like above and beyond anything. I will tell you that there were certain steps that helped me. Now, I know that there are many times that you can either, let's just talk about watching a show or a movie, right? And you see the woman who gets abused, and then you see the police officers talking to her about sharing her story, right? And about how that is going to help her no matter how painful it is. But to watch the other person who has done some irreversible damage to that extent actually be punished for what they did to you is part of healing. So that was one huge thing, was actually getting the courage up to go and file that initial police report when he initially attacked me. That would be number one. That was the first step. Okay. Because again, and I talk about this on my shows, a lot of the times we all know you hide the abuse for multiple reasons, because you don't want anybody to hate that other person, because you personally believe they're going to change. We all do. If you didn't think the person was going to change, there's no way you're going back the next time. I mean, let's just be real about that. So that's number one. Number two is you're guilty of what? You're not guilty, but you feel guilty. You feel guilty of something. You feel ashamed. You feel embarrassed. So coming out and letting go of all of those feelings to be able to say, hey, this is what happened to me, to even just report, that was key step number one. Number two was going to counseling. I had to get to counseling now. And I joke around about it. I still see the same counselor. I've been seeing her for years. And I will also say that because my son was my daughter, she was just born when this happened, but my son at that point was 5. So I put him in counseling as well. Counseling is not only needed for the one who has directly gone through the abuse. I actually tried to get my parents to go to counseling as well because it took a toll on my mom. I saw what it did to my mom. Counseling can be helpful when used appropriately among the entire family unit. Okay. Now, when I say used appropriately, it means that, say you're in a domestic violence situation and you decide that you want to go to counseling, but you're going to stay with your abuser and work things out, and your child's going to go to counseling. You all need separate counselors. It doesn't work to where you can be like, okay, well, we're all going to go see the same one, because I have seen in a few forums where they will use counseling and things that you're saying, or that the counselor is saying against, right? So you always need to have your solace. That's what counseling is about. So I'm not saying that it's never going to work and you can't do counseling as a group. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, when I'm talking counseling right now, as far as healing and helping yourself, whether you stay or don't stay, it's your own individual counselor, own individual counseling. Okay. That was number 2. And as I said, years, we are now almost 4 years and I'm still going to counseling. And now, do I go and see her every week like I used to? No. Now, do I go and see her every other week? Yes. However, there's certain months that'll throw PTSD or be too much, or something's happening, or he'll go, I get a letter saying he's going up for parole or something, and I may have to see her a couple extra times. That's what I mean by recovery is constant. You cannot be like, well, I was doing this great and I made this many steps and that's where I expect to be. First of all, expectations are resentments in escrow. That's what they are. Okay. You can have goals, you can have hope, you can have faith, but you cannot expect anything. Because if you expect, you are setting yourself up to be let down if it doesn't happen the exact way you are seeing. That being said, we can take 10 steps forward and 5 steps back the next day. And guess what? You can still take another 5 back the next 3 days and wind up 10 steps back. You're still recovering. It doesn't matter. There is no timestamp. You cannot measure it, and everyone is different.
And I think that's a really important point to make. Everybody is different and everybody's recovery story looks different.
Yes.
And it's so important that we also don't judge just by how something looks on the outside, to say like, oh, this person is doing so great in recovery because they've got so much money and their life is perfect, because you don't know what things people are battling behind the scenes, or like you said, what may be a trigger to somebody when something happens. And so when you brought up the fact that like maybe, getting a letter about him maybe being able to be up for parole and that kind of thing, how do you operate not in like a state of fear?
So I'm working on that. I do not have that answer, and I'm not sure if anybody ever will have the exact answer, because each time it's a different fear. The first time the fear may be the initial shock of, you've never even heard that phone call of parole, right? So it's just a freak out of the word parole. Oh my gosh, he's getting out, And then the second time around, it could be more like, well, I never thought about the stipulations. Maybe they should put this in so that I know that I'm safe here, or whatever. Each time it's a different type of fear. So you have to acknowledge the fact that you are responding in fear, which is not, it's like acknowledging the fact that you're in denial over death. I mean, do you see the oxymoron there? It's like, those are the stages of grief. Is, I don't want to believe that I lost this person, so I'm in denial, but I have to accept the fact that I'm denying that first before I can, but it is that's the case. Like, you have got to accept first, and then beyond accepting, you then have to look at it. And my best friend, actually, she went through a domestic violence with her ex-husband, and she taught me this. She said, you need to look at things sometimes like just straight. Like, everybody's like, oh, there's always a gray area, which most of the time there is. But when you're in a situation and you instantly respond with fear, especially because of abuse, there is no gray area anymore. You have to give yourself a simple, defined answer. Okay. And that being said, you have to look and say, okay, I can do A, B, C, and D. Whether how erroneous it is. Like, okay, I hear that he's going out on, he might get parole. What do I have control over? What can I control? Okay, well, I can control this. I can control getting up, changing my name, changing my hair, running away. Like, from the most craziest ideas to, or I can sit here and contact my advocate and find out what the next steps are. She used to make me list from the craziest thought that I had in my head all the way to whatever thought I had as far as what my choices were. And she would make me list them, then look at them, physically look at them with my eyes and be like, okay, now let's look at this. Which ones? Come on now, cross out the ones, like, we all know you're not going to shave your head, okay. All right. You're right. My hair. I love my hair too much. Can't do that. Okay. But like, and with that, you kind of chuckle a little bit at yourself or you're crazy, like how crazy your idea was. And then it kind of lightens, and this is just my method, and it kind of lightens the fear a little bit, right? Because now I'm like, wow, you really thought that. And then so you go through and now you're looking at it and you're like, okay, well, here's my legit options, right? What do I have control over? What can I not control? Because at the end of the day, sitting here getting upset over what I can't control, it's hurting me. It's hurting my children, anyone who's trying to have a loving relationship with me. And the one and only person who is not being affected by it is the only person who I'm trying to affect with whatever my reaction would have been.
Yeah, that's good. And you brought up your children as well, and I did want to ask you about that. What is that? How has that dynamic been? Being someone who pours out so much. So you mentioned that you teach, so you are always giving and you're always pouring out of yourself. And then on top of teaching other children, you have children of your own that you are, raising every day. So how
Yeah.
has that dynamic been of healing, but also being present enough to pour out and continue to not uplift not only your children but other people's children as well? Hello, everybody. If you are just now tuning in to this episode of Unmute Your Mic, I'm currently talking to Zena. She is from Georgia, and we are discussing the very important topic of domestic violence, being a survivor, being a warrior, and the importance of sharing your story. So please continue to listen in.
So, okay, I always believed, and this was like the hardest thing for me to like practice actually after this. Like, I always believed no matter what fight I got into with my mom, when I went, because, when you get out of college, I was still living at my mom's house and I started to teach and then moved out after that. But I get into an argument with her and I knew that I would have to go to school and drop like whatever problems I had, drop at the door. And everybody says that with your job, right? Like, you're supposed to be able to drop your problems at the door, drop your problems at the door. Here's the problem: abuse and being beaten and mentally messed. There you go. Yeah, I got you. Okay. Um, I know for a fact that when you're messed with like that, it's very hard. Okay. It's not like fighting with your mom. It's not like fighting with your boyfriend because he took the wrong keys to work, or whatever. It's not, it's a different type. It's almost like a mental cloud. And with what I did for a living and what I do, when I was in the relationship, I was not present for them the best way I could be. Honestly, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I was still able to be, because I wasn't. I was being told I wasn't good enough. I was being told that, all these derogatory things and talking down to me. Well, then you start to believe that about yourself. And then when you start to believe that about yourself, you put that out there, and that's what your kids are now believing about you. Okay. And even your students, and you might not realize that, but that's what you're putting out there, and so I would honestly say that in my personal beliefs, I do not feel that until I said that it happened, until I spoke up about what was happening, I was not able to be present for my children and anybody else. I actually wound up.
That's real. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wound up taking off about a year and a half off of teaching because of it.
And that's a real answer. And I love that because I love that you're not giving like fluffy, beautiful, like everything was perfect responses. Because when people are really going through things, these are the conversations that they need to hear to know that
Mhm.
what they're feeling is actually real, that it's not some fluffy, perfect land. But also, like you said, until you were able to really start your healing process and acknowledge what was going on, that is when your healing, like you being able to be present, truly began. And I think there's
Mhm.
a lot to say about that, that there is freedom in sharing your story, and there's freedom in being able to say,
Oh,
look,
absolutely. Yeah.
it is messy and not pretty, and I would never want anyone else to go through it. But we also know that people are, and that when we go
Yes.
through things, we're very rarely, if ever, are we the only person who has ever experienced such thing. And so I did want to ask you, as you have gone through all of this, and like when we were talking before we recorded, you said you were more than just a survivor, right? Because that wasn't the only part of your story. So what do you think it has been? What do you think it is inside of you that made you such a fighter? Because there are people who have gone through less than what you have gone through, and maybe were not able to not only pull themselves together, but you've pulled yourself together to even create a platform for other people to be able to share their experiences. What is it inside of you that kind of brought that about?
So I would say I'm gonna say my kids, but I'm gonna honestly go deeper into that. I love both of my children. Okay, both of them, and I when I was younger, my dad used to do the whole "you're a girl, you can't be out as late because it's too dangerous for you," as a boy. And I was always like, never about this. And I love my kids the same. However, my daughter is what caused me to be this fighter. When I found out that I was having a little girl, it was her father who was my abuser, and I was going through a lot. And I never, ever, ever wanted her to ever have to feel the way I felt. I have letters I wrote to her while I was pregnant. And I had a blog talk show where I came out with my story at first before I made the other platform for other women. And that was called The Journey We Are Not Alone. And I read some of those that I wrote her. But my main thing was that I never wanted her to feel alone. I never wanted her to feel like something like this was her fault, that she was stupid because of something like this, that she deserved any of this, or she's less than, or any of that. And that is my driving force, is her. When he attacked me, I didn't want to report. Most of us don't. We just want to run away, hide, not do it. The reason I reported she was that driving force. Okay. Again, I love my son to death, and there's nothing between a boy and a girl. But when it comes to the whole domestic violence and making sure that that little girl never, ever, ever, ever has to feel that she is alone in this. And hence, that's how I came up with the name The Journey We Are Not Alone, is because you are not alone in this. And there are so many people who are in this with you that you would not even know. You I promise, and I say this all the time, the woman you see smiling the most, the man you see holding the door for the most people and helping the most, out, and you have a case of water and they come walking up and they're like, I'm going to put that in your trunk for you. Those people inside, you don't know, because I'm telling you, I'd walk around with the biggest smile on my face, and the tears that came when the sun went down and nobody could hear or see me. I mean, and that's a huge thing, is that we hide. And I don't want anybody to hide anymore. The one thing you keep saying that is huge, huge, no judgment. Everybody needs to know that they have a safe place, a safe haven. Okay? Somewhere to go where you do not feel judged. You do not feel like anybody's looking at you like, really? Like, come on, because you know what? It is a known fact. And I'm just going to go with the word narcissist. I'm not even going to go into psychopath, sociopath, whatever. The narcissist. It is textbook proven that they can manipulate lawyers, judges, doctors, the highest of the high. If they can manipulate them, anybody, if you can take anything from what I'm saying right now, if they can manipulate them, do not feel less than, do not feel stupid, do not feel any of it if they manipulated you. Because look, we all know how much you pay to go to law school or to sit on that judge bench, on the bench, or all of that. Come on now, let's look at it with perspective here. I know they make you feel stupid. And then when you look at what they did, you're like, wow, come on, man. Like, you are smarter than that. Okay, I get it. You know better. Stop telling yourself you're not smart, because this has nothing to do with brains. This has everything to do with a big heart. Most of the time, that's what gets us in trouble, is that we have a big heart. We want to believe the best in people. And I'm not saying to not trust people, and I'm not saying to not believe in people, and that, please, that's also not what I'm saying, because there is a happy and healthy life with a fine line. But what you need to do is educate on boundaries, educate on healthy relationships, what they look like, red flags, control, gaslighting, manipulate. Look at the whole picture. If something feels wrong, don't ignore your gut. We don't like our guts because a lot of times they go against what we want to do, but they go against what we want to do because what we want to do is not the thing we should be doing.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
like you said, it could be, like you said, it has nothing to do with you being uneducated. Because people who are like master manipulators, they're known for that because they know how to get past
Mm-hmm.
certain boundaries and walls that people have, and they
Yeah.
know how to get directly to the part of you, like you said, that heart, that caring, that part
Yeah.
of you that may even be like, something's off, but I'm gonna give this person a chance because I believe
Yeah.
the best in them. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we don't want to walk around being afraid. And every time somebody talks to us or looks at us, we're like, don't talk to me, don't look at me. Like, we don't want those kind of personalities. But like you said, it's being educated
Yeah.
to know that, like, hey, this something doesn't feel right. This person is almost too nice. Like, what's going on here? And
Mm-hmm.
like you, another point that you said, you're making so many amazing points. But another point that you
Thanks.
said was, you don't know. There's not a look, right? So it could be the person opening the door for you who is the most gentleman and has a suit on. That, or
Yeah.
it could be the woman, like you said, who has the biggest smile on their face, but are really struggling through some things behind the scene. And so it's us not walking around assuming that we know everybody's life, that we know their story.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like you said, not judging them, not being at a place where that
That's
when they
huge.
finally do tell you their
Huge.
story, you're like,
Yep.
what? Why? I would never stay in a situation like that, or I would
Mm-hmm.
never do that. Because until you've had to walk in those shoes, which hopefully everyone doesn't have to walk in those shoes. The
Mm-hmm.
important part about telling our stories is that we get to sometimes prevent people from walking down the path we walked, because they hear our story and they
Absolutely.
remember it. And when they're
Mm-hmm.
going through an experience, they're like, wait, this sounds familiar. I've heard about something like
I
this
read that
before.
book. I watched
Yeah.
that movie, But,
Yeah.
along the same thing that you're talking about with that no judgment and all of that. The other thing and this is a statistic that I like to put out there almost everywhere, because this is something else that makes people who go back get down on themselves. And this is something support groups start to give up on people after they go back several times. On average, of reported domestic violence, okay? And now we can all agree, before I say the statistic, that domestic violence is not even reported anywhere close to where it needs to be, okay? So what's reported average, people go back to their abusers 7 times. 7 times. So now let's talk about the people who don't report at all. How many of those people did not report the first half? Okay, if what statistics are showing are on average of 7 times, I promise you that number is way higher. So know that, yes, that's normal too. Our goal is to, and this is my line and my phrase is, educate before it's too late. You want to get out before it gets too late. Okay. Because there will come a day, and that day was he never put his hands on me. He mentally, he emotionally, financially, all of that abused me. Um, but the first time he put his hands on me was almost the day my life ended. Like it went from, it didn't even go from an object being thrown past me to maybe a punch at me. It went from nothing to he was climbing on top of me and choking me, and I couldn't breathe. So that's the thing, is that yes, it is typical. Yes, it is something, but the point is we're trying to break that cycle. Okay? So you don't get down on yourself, but know that each time you go back it does get worse, and each time you go back you don't know if you're going to get out that time because of how bad it may get. So keep that in mind. But again, don't be hard on yourself if you do go back. It's okay. We all do. I promise. Anybody who turns around is like, "Oh, I got out of that relationship with the first bad word he said to me." I will turn around and be like, "Really? Okay, can I follow you for the next 20 years? Because obviously I'm doing something wrong." Because I'm very good at making excuses for people. Okay. And a lot of people are. Oh, they were in a bad mood. Oh, they had a bad childhood and they didn't really see what the better way of growing up was. That's why they scream, kick, yell, curse, close, scream, slam doors, whatever, put holes in the walls, throw things. That's what they saw. No, it's not okay. That's it. That's what you need to know, is it's not okay. And if that person continues to do it, even after you make that boundary clear that it's not okay, the likelihood that that is going to change goes down drastically. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, this is such an important topic, and I think it's definitely something that needs to be talked about more often, and talked about not in a shameful way, not in
Mm-hmm.
a like, let me tell you this secret, and I don't like, I think the more that we expose these things, the more that we talk about the red flags, the more that we talk about the healing process, the more that we allow people to know that they are not alone, the harder it is going
Yep.
to be for the people who do these kind of things to be able to secretly abuse people in the dark. And like we said earlier on, there is freedom in sharing it and letting it be known, because I also know that if you are trying to walk through anything, it is so important that you have people beside you, so that if you do retreat or try to isolate yourself, they're right there like, hey, what are you doing? How are you? You know, I'm going to come to your house and knock on your door if I don't hear from you, because I know that I need to, you know,
Yeah.
I need to look out for you. And
Yeah.
sometimes it may seem extreme, but we can get ourselves in trouble if we just try to say, hey, I got this all by myself. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need anybody else. And I think you're such a beautiful example of
Hey.
not a perfect story, but using what you were dealt to say, hey, not only am I going to walk through this, but I'm going to turn around and get other people and say, hey, I'm going to walk through this with you so that you don't feel how I felt. And that being stemmed from your daughter, you know, but now I think it is going to grow to be something amazing. And I'm just so honored that you were on my platform today.
Thank you so
And
much.
I want to encourage everybody who is listening to please reach out to her. I'm going to put all of her connecting information down below. So send her a message. You know, just reach out if you need to have a conversation, because this is somebody
Yes.
who is open and willing and wants to help.
Yes,
And so I
absolutely.
think that is, it's very important. So I just thank you again,
That's,
Zena. It has been a true joy.
thank you. And for anybody who is searching for help or support or somebody to talk to, listen, I am not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a counselor, but I can speak from my experiences. However, if you do go on my page and you look at my shows there, I have done shows with licensed therapists and counselors and other people who work for, nonprofit, who help. Whether you want to reach out to, maybe I work with some of the organizations and helping somehow, whatever it is, go to my page. Everybody on there, we talk all the time about no judgment, total contact at all times. You can contact any of us at any time for anything. Even if you're just like, hey Z, guess what? I just need to let this all out there, and I don't even want an answer from you. I just need to get it out to somebody I know who's not going to look at me in any way. Totally open, totally, that's what I'm there for. That's I tell everybody, nobody wants to look at something like you went through something that horrible for any reason whatsoever. But if I can say to myself that this was my purpose for it, and that I know that I can just help one person get out of it, just one, then that's my purpose. So please, yes, contact me. And as I said, look at the videos. There are plenty of people out there who are open for the contact, open for being connected, and building this support network together. And please, if you want to come on and share your stories, or from any vantage point, outside looking in, inside looking out, whatever it is, if you're still in it, I'm here. So please, yes, thank you. Contact me.
And I want to thank everybody again for listening to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and just continue to be bold, be heard, and unmute your mic. Thank you again, Zena. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.